And I want to talk about the slippery slope. You know, we hear people call in and say, you know, you can't take my gun rights away because it's going to be a slippery slope. I had a conversation with my neighbor upstate about in New York State now, all private exchanges of gun sales, every one, even if you're going to sell it to your neighbor, you got to go down to a gun dealer and get a background check. And my neighbor was like, you know, if two people know each other, they're probably not going to do it. That may be the case, but the law is then even that much more effective. Because the problem is that a lot of times you're selling guns to people that you don't know. And that's the problem. And we have a Supreme Court ruling that has edified, for better or for worse, this interpretation that people have a private right to the Second Amendment. No legislation is going to change that. I got an email from a listener, longtime member, listener from the Air America days. I've been in law enforcement for 12 years, since before 9/11. I usually start your day by listening to your podcast as I start my patrol route. I have to take issue with a couple of things that come up. First is you refer to the militarization of police and the tanks that you saw in Boston. Unless you saw something I didn't, what you saw was police in protective gear. Some of them were driving in armored vehicles like the Lenco Bearcat that are built in Massachusetts. Just because I put a helmet on my head doesn't mean that I want to intimidate you, hurt you, or violate your civil rights. All I want is not to be hurt or killed when someone hits me in the head. There is, and I think that's a perfectly legitimate perspective. And the implication is not that any individual police officer wants to do this. The implication isn't even necessarily that police departments want to do this. He goes on to write, those armored vehicles might have cost too much money, but building them gave jobs to Americans and protected those officers in Boston from people that were murderous bomb throwers. We protect money with armored cars, so why can't we use them to protect our own lives? All valid. Yet, we know that when the police came in contact with these two guys, and they were throwing those pipe bombs, and they were throwing the pressure cooker, that there were no up-armored vehicles there. In fact, the only times these things were sent around were when they were just patrolling the streets or when they were cordoning off the streets. And yes, police officers should have protection. But should every city in the country have these? I mean, we know they have them like in Keene, New Hampshire. We're able to buy one of these up-armored, you don't want to call them a tank, it doesn't have a turret. One of these up-armored vehicles. Should every town in the country have one? Why not? I mean, we are spending millions of dollars. We have LRADs in some cities. There are instances where, you know, that guy in LA, I can't remember when it was, but went on a huge shooting spree. And cops were taken out, not Dorner, I'm talking years and years ago. But there is a fine line, it seems to me, between making sure that we protect police to the extent that we can, and then providing huge sums of Department of Homeland Security money that incentivize and basically force these police departments to buy as much military hardware, frankly, as they can. And we start to create an environment in this country. I mean, I tweeted over the weekend, Massachusetts at least once voters repealed the seatbelt laws. The legislature passed the seatbelt law and then voters repealed it because they were so offended about their personal liberties being so curtailed as to being forced to wear a seatbelt. Now that sounds really sort of almost cute. It seems ridiculous. Is there anybody who would really make a strong argument now that our civil liberties are curtailed by seatbelts? But obviously the vast majority, or not the vast, I mean the majority of people who participated in that referendum certainly thought it was. And so the culture has changed. We now value the safety that seatbelts provide for us and the reduced car insurance rates and the reduction in cost to provide medical services and the drop in highway fatalities. And we've absorbed that. But now have we absorbed the notion that every town should have their own up-armored vehicle? That we should be able to shut down a city when there was zero evidence of an existential threat? I mean, if there was reason to believe that these terrorists possessed some type of dirty bomb, if there was reason to believe that these terrorists had the ability to create a network where they were blowing up subway stations, multiple subway stations, I think you might get into have an argument there. But I mean, look at the examples from around the world. In London, in Jerusalem, look at what took place in the Olympics in Atlanta. We've never done this before. Then there seems to be absolutely no dissent about shutting down all the public transportation, basically saying to people, you cannot go to work today. Yeah, there were people who got out and walked around, and I guess people wanted the day off. Maybe that's one of the upshots. But you shut down a city in this way? What if there was even what threat would you now say we couldn't do this for? The Washington sniper? Should we have shut down all of D.C. at that time? For how long? They were actively shooting people for weeks. I don't know. These are all questions that seem to be answered. And they are all part and parcel of the same thing in my estimation.
Isn't it sort of interesting, too, that they found him literally minutes after they ended that whole...
well, that's the other...
a person who was told to stay in his house went outside and saw him.
The other argument is, of course, that, from a practical standpoint, the fact is that it is a more effective crime-fighting tool, obviously, to not have people stay inside like that. If the city had been shut down since Monday and those photos had been released and no one had gone to work and no one had done anything, I don't think you would have caught those people at all. As it was still by chance that they stumbled into a robbery and they got panicked. So I don't know. These are all things to be thinking about at this point. While, Lindsey Graham is out there basically saying, our homeland is a battlefield now. Well, more people died in Texas, West Texas. More people die at the workplace. More people die on our roads. The whole point is that these guys, with the most amount of malicious intent you could have, were only able to do this in terms of genuine in terms of being able to kill people and in terms of property destruction. They were able to terrorize the city, but what they were actually able to do, that's the whole point, right? Is that these guys could never have gotten a dirty bomb. They didn't even have the wherewithal to get serious explosives. And had they, maybe they would have been tracked down. So, you know, the criminal justice system works. And they weren't found because they were being spied upon. The FBI went and investigated one of these guys on behalf of the Russian government a couple of years ago. That still didn't stop anything. The guy was almost kicked out of his, he had been radicalized, but he was almost kicked out of his mosque because of the way that
of the outburst he had.
Yeah.
No, he was during Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and the imam compared Martin Luther King Jr. to the prophet, and he had a public outburst.
He had a public outburst, and he was basically sat down and said, "You can't act this way." So he clearly wasn't radicalized by his mosque. If anything, they were a moderating factor on him. Didn't work. Would it have made a difference if there had been if the whole place had been wired and they had been aware of that outburst? Absolutely not. Of course not. These happen all the time. I've been in temples where people get mad at the rabbi for espousing some type of, overly overt pro-Israel.
Well, let's be honest, Sam. The Jews will never do anything like that.
I guess you're right. Nor the Christians.
They never do anything like that. They're all good people. Jews, Christians never engage in any sort of violence of any sort.
Right. So, it's about trade-offs. And I appreciate we need to, we have police officers who go out there, they risk their lives. And we need to do everything we can while still to protect them, but by still maintaining some semblance of not living in a militarized state. And that both is in appearance and in practice. The reality is we could protect policemen even more by monitoring every single individual, by having every block with video cameras everywhere, by having retina scans every time you get on the subway, by, of course.
Isn't that email you read where the person said that they wear that gear because they don't want someone, they're worried someone's gonna bash them in the head or something like that? I mean, doesn't that also speak to another problem with police departments? I mean, okay, in a situation like this, okay, I understand, but they're using this gear for so much now.
Well, that's the problem.
I mean, that's how our police are being trained to think. Not let's work with the community. They're out there thinking, I'm worried I'm going to get bashed in the head. I'm worried everyone's a villain.
I will tell you that
everyone's out to hurt me.
In the lead up to the RNC in 2004, I had a pretty decent relationship with a guy who I believe at the time was a detective, and he was saying that what they were being told, and he believed it. This was going to be the WTO. There were going to be planting bombs. There was going to be Molotov cocktails. There was going to be all sorts of violence. These guys were ready to go. They were hyped up. Same thing happened with Occupy. Look, if you are facing a situation where a guy is holed up with a semi-automatic weapon and has hostages, by all means, bring out the shields. Bring out the full riot gear or the full body armor. Bring out, if you're in your armored vehicle, But the problem is these things are there all the time, and they got to get used. That is the problem. So then you have LRADs being brought out to get people to disperse from a park where no public safety issue is happening. That's the reality. Nothing that the Department of Health couldn't deal with. That's the problem, is that it gets used in situations that do not require those things. And I understand excess of caution, but at one point there's a tipping point. I could keep my son in a plastic bubble and roll him through the streets to the extent that I ever let him out of the house, but he wouldn't be able to live a life. It would eventually impact him. So there needs to be a balance, and I think our balance is out of whack. 25 years ago, seatbelts are, the death knell of our civil liberties, but shutting down the whole city? I mean, what wouldn't it take to shut down a city at this point? Rash of bank robberies? No, I'm serious. I'm not being facetious. What does it take at that point? Dangerous guy escapes from prison? Considered armed? I don't know.